What's up, gente? What's up, Raza? Today I want to talk about the Jeffrey Epstein files and my thoughts. I've had time to think about a lot of this, and it, for a lot of us, it doesn't make sense, especially because you've got people from elite, wealthy families, and then you got others who are not so wealthy or elite, right? You got a lot of people with power. That's what it comes down to. But it's more than just that. And I want to credit, and just from the get go, I want to credit the Anthony Montero. He is with the Free School out of Philadelphia, and he wrote an article regarding this. And it's something that a lot of us have been thinking about. And it really does come down to one thing and one word, and that's white supremacy in the modern age, right? White supremacy in modern times. And I say I want to credit Anthony Montero because he really lays it out in this article where he talks about everyone involved, and it makes a lot of sense because I've spoken about this in the past, and I mentioned people from Bill Clinton to Jay Z. There's women in the Epstein files. There's people from Mexico and Saudi Arabia and other parts of the world, and it's a conglomerate of a bunch of elite people, but also a bunch of powerful people. And then there's some that don't seem very powerful or elite, but it makes sense, right? But at the end of the day, it comes down to things that in the 3 million files that have been released, and some of them that have been redacted. That means that they blacked off certain names or certain things. Um, they go into detail in many times in many of these discussions. Epstein himself goes into some detail where questions are asked about race, where they make jokes and they laugh at black people. They joke around about killing the inferior people. That means the black, the brown, the Asian, those who they see as inferior. Now, you would think, and this is where a lot of us out there, let's please not get it twisted, because when I say Israeli, don't think I'm talking about Jewish or Jews, right? Because Jewish is a religion, Judaism. Jews are a group of people, could be a group of people anywhere. If you convert to be a Jew today, you would be a Jew out of religious, background, right? But when we think of Jews, what do we think of in modern times? And this should make sense to many of you. If you know the history of the Middle East, the history of Africa, the history of the world, you know that the original Jews were actually black. They were Hebrews. Uh, it wasn't the same people necessarily today. The original indigenous people of Israel have been uprooted, have been removed, displaced, killed, genocided, to you name it, to where we look at somebody like um, at Jeffrey Epstein, for example. We look at somebody like Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel currently. This guy's last name is this family's from like Poland. His last name is something like McCloskey or something like that. He's a white Jew, and that's what it comes down to, because anybody convert to Judaism. So when you think about history and how history has developed, you have a lot of white Jews that throughout time have taken up, these settlements and moved into Israel. And when you speak to them, you see them. Go see any documentary where they interview a lot of these Jewish people who are taking away the homes of the Palestinians. They're white people. They call themselves Jews, Hasidic Jews. There's different Sanashi Jews. There's different kind of Jewish Orthodox Jews, different kind of Jewish branches, right? Just like there is Christian sects. But one thing that a lot of the modern Jews have in common is that they're white. And it's not the Jews that we should focus on. That's my point. It's the Israeli power base. It's the Mossad behind everything. And Mossad is like the secret service of Israel. Is their power base, is their politicians. It's the people who make the calls, and they make it for the elite and for the powerful. Unfortunately, when you read this article that I mentioned earlier by Anthony Montero, you realize, and it makes sense, because that's one thing I was getting at. I was like, it doesn't make sense on its face. Yes, we're talking about sex crimes and trafficking of young girls, which is horrible. That's a crime against humanity, punishable by death in any country, right? In any civilized society, you take those people out, you remove them, right? Trafficking like that. But it comes down to white supremacy, because that's what they're talking about. That's what they're joking about in the emails. Noam Chomsky, for example, is asked about, creating this master race, this crazy, new race of people, powerful people. Now they don't call it the master race, but that's what Adolf Hitler referred to it as, the master race, the Uberman, right? The Superman in German. And so the Epstein files are more than just the files of sick men and women for that matter, but definitely a lot of men and elite and powerful men. It's more than that. They use their power to obviously do a honey trap, get people, have dirt on them. Now they got you, right? Matter of fact, a lot of people believe that Bill Clinton, people like the former Bill Richardson, the former governor of New Mexico, where Epstein actually had a ranch in New Mexico where they suspect maybe some dead bodies are buried. They're investigating that, which has, by the way, been brought up by a billionaire running for Congress or something like that, a Republican MAGA billionaire who's put a stop to the investigation. That should tell you something. But Bill Richardson, he was a powerful man. But again, white supremacy, even the people from Mexico, those weren't indigenous people we're talking about. As a matter of fact, you know who isn't in the Epstein files? The Chinese. You know who else isn't in the Epstein files? Some of the African leaders that are leading right now, and also Fidel Castro and other people who come from countries that resisted imperialism, that fought against imperialism, fought against the United States and the capitalism that it was, imposing on the world. And I say imposing because when you study capitalism, you understand that it's not a fair system. As a matter of fact, it's a sickening system, economic system that should go away because it breeds slavery, it breeds control, and it leads to what we call today as and what we see as fascism. Today, the Trump administration is playing out in front of our eyes. This crazy old man is dying in front of our face. I'm counting the days because I think he's going to drop. He's sick in the head. He's not all there. I've talked about it on my channel before that we got to, it'd be smart if they could invoke the 25th Amendment, but they won't invoke the 25th Amendment. That is in the Constitution where his cabinet is allowed to remove him. They're so terrified of this man. There's such a cult around him, and there's grifters and people trying to get rich off of him and behind him and behind him, and they'll do whatever to the point where people like Marco Rubio, who is not white, wants to be white. He wants to be white. He promotes and talks about the Western civilization, and how Western civilization. We got to get back to that. That fool's talking about white supremacy, and he ain't white. And you got a lot of those kind of people in those files. They're grifters, they're wannabes, they're hanger-ons, and unfortunately, they're enablers of these wealthy circles who ultimately, according to Anthony Montero, really breaks it down. If you haven't seen this article, again, you'll find it in the Free School out of Philadelphia. It's a publication, and it was published, I believe, February 14th, at a session February 14th at the Free School. And you can find it at the avantjournal.com. And this is really interesting, again, because it really breaks down what truly this is about. Many of us have been talking about this. Some of this doesn't add up until you start, take a step back and start thinking about history. And you start looking at some of the stuff that we're talking about. Where did Jeffrey Epstein come from, right? And who built him up? And what were his ideas and others. And it shouldn't even be him, because the bigger picture here is white supremacy. White supremacy, that's what we're talking about. And that's the reason why the Brown Berets, why the Black Panthers, why Zapatistas, why going back as far as 500 years ago, our ancestors resisted these monsters that got off these ships, these boats. Our ancestors resisted, not just in Mexico, but in North America and South and Central America. They resisted these monsters because these monsters came with the intent to kill, the intent to colonize, and the intent to spread their colonization around the world and control the people and control the resources. And they did, and they took slaves along and created slavery with it. And I call them monsters for this reason, because if you fast forward to 2026, where we are today, this is more than 500 years now. And according to the Epstein files, they still think the same. They still act the same. They are still trafficking in young girls and human beings for that matter. They're still flaunting their wealth. They're still planting their flags, and they're still trying to hide behind their religion as if there's some sort of holy person, whether it be Christianity, Catholicism, whether it be Islam, or whether it be Judaism. It doesn't matter. These elites that we're talking about in the Epstein files, it was more than just the sex crimes. It was the white supremacy that they wanted to spread, that Jeffrey Epstein himself believed in. This is called eugenics for those of you who don't understand. Eugenics is the idea that some people were born more superior than others, and therefore they should rule. This is a very popular idea in the 1800s during the Industrial Revolution. You had junk science where they said you could tell a person and what kind of crime that person was going to commit based on the size of their skull, the shape of their head, where they come from, things like that. So obviously they will point to black, brown people, Indian and Asian people, and say, look, those people are inferior. Therefore, the superior race, according to eugenics, is the white race. It's the white race. And when we talk about and I started talking about the Israelis, when we talk about them, we are not talking about the original Jews here. Those people are not the original Jews sitting there. They're sitting on the land that once belonged to people of dark skin. And so I know this is going to be controversial for many, but I want you all to think about and dig deeper as some of you guys, some of you all begin to forget about these Epstein files. Don't let that slip, because that tells us what we got to know. Why did he start this war? Why did Donald Trump start this war in Iran? Why is he starting all these wars? Why is the madman acting crazy and losing it every second in front of us? He's on TV, online, on social media, saying crazy things, right? So why did he start these wars? He started them to distract from the fact that these files are, one, embarrassing, and two, it's exposing the Epstein class of rulers, of elites who want to stay in power, not for the next 100 years, but the next 1,000 years. The next 1,000 years. This is what we call that. That's what we look at Adolf Hitler. He thought he'd be in control for the next 1,000 years. The Third Reich, right? And the Reich means the rule of these people. So when we look at history, everybody, let's just understand that it's repeating itself. Some people say it doesn't repeat itself, but it does look similar. It comes around, and it's true, and it's true. And I think they're afraid and they're running around scared because, and that's why I'm convinced Donald Trump started these stupid wars and has been starting stupid wars, doing stupid things. Cuba's next on the list, probably Mexico, probably Colombia, whoever he can get his hands on, just to distract from what they're really trying to do. And that's stay in power for the next 1,000 years. He's going to cancel elections. I cannot say that enough. He is going to cancel elections in order to stay in power. Okay. And with that said, we've got to organize. That's the only thing we can do at this point. We've got to organize. You could pick up a gun, but unless you're going to use, that kind of weapon and you don't have access to what they got, trust me, it's going to be a hard fight. So we have to organize, use our knowledge, use our unity, and unite on simple points, simple things. We don't have to agree on everything, Raza, but we definitely have to organize and we have to educate the young people so they know what's up. Don't let them fall into these stereotypic traps and mind games that people play to divide us. That the Jews do this and the Catholics are that. Yes, we were colonized people. That is true. We know that. A lot of us were raised Catholic, or even probably be converted Jew to Judaism. But it's not about being Jew or Jewish, and it's not about being Catholic or any other religion. It's about being conscious about what's really happening. Don't let those things get in the way, and don't let race be a reason why you can't work with people. Don't, let's do this, because at the end of the day, there's only one country that isn't in the Epstein files or leaders, and they're not in there because they resisted a lot of what happened, and that's China. That's China. Even Russia's in the Epstein files. There's a whole thing there with Russia. So China's the only one there. And a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, there you go again, talking about communism." And yes, I am talking about communism, socialism, but I'm not talking that we have to be communist like China or anything like that. My point is, they're governing in a manner that they're not dumb. They're not dumb, and they're playing the long game, but they're also taking care of their people. And that's something this government is not doing, because as we speak in Texas, there's a center, detention center, and a lot of people are dying. There's detention centers everywhere, and people are dying. The ICE is still out there hunting us down. But as I speak, a lot of our people are dying, and it's time that we continue to organize because now it's getting warmer. The summertime's coming around. I got a feeling Trump is also going to unleash his thugs of ICE from ICE on a lot of us, and we need to be organized, be ready to deal with that. Big shout out to all the people from Unión del Barrio to the Brown Berets and every ally and comrades who are out there taking on ICE and stepping up, to them when they come into our communities. More power to you, right? And so keep that up because at the end of the day, it's not about China. But if there were ever an economic system that would help us, it would be socialism. A socialist government with the right values would definitely help us because what the Epstein files is not about, it's not about socialism and taking care of people, and it's not about communism. If you want to get into that, it's literally about the rich taking care of the rich. That's what it comes down to. So at the end of the day, we've got to overthrow that system. We've got to get rid of white supremacy, and that means getting rid of capitalism. But what do we replace it with? Hopefully we have a socialist system in mind and in place that we can agree with, because that's the only thing. When we add our values to this discussion, when we add and evolve as people, that's the only thing that's going to help us through. So with that, gente, I'm out. Just want to do that because Anthony Montero, out of the Free School in Philadelphia, did a great article, and they did a whole write up on that. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. Out. Que viva la raza. More power to the people. And hope. All power to the people. I'm out.